2025 sucked. I mean, not for me. I was more or less fine. Can't complain, but it was a bad year. The world is worse off having made it through 2025, and here we are talking about games again. I love games, don't get me wrong, but not only was the games industry doing its usual terrible awfulness, but the games themselves left me wanting more. In previous years, a theme kind of presented itself after looking at my experience with the games as a whole, and it's something I could wrap up the whole analysis with. For 2025, the theme was evident before I even started. That theme was disappointment. I did enjoy a number of these games, but never before have I experienced so many consistent letdowns in games that I've played, so let's just get to it. I'm 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈, and this is something about every game I played in 2025. 𝒕𝒕𝒣. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. If I were a good comedian, or even just a concise writer, I would say this game should have been a free pack-in and move right along. But I'm neither of those things, and I did waste 10 of my dollars and many hours of my life, so I think I get to rant a little bit. To begin to say more, there's just not a reason to play this game outside of launch week. The fact that it's a museum that is entirely comprised of the Nintendo Switch 2 is cute, and as a mouse evangelist, it even has some use as an onboarding tool for people, let's be real, mostly kids, who haven't experienced mouse look in a game before. There are okay minigames and some interesting demos, but it should have been a lot more streamlined. You absolutely cannot play this game as a minigame collection. There isn't a great way to just get to the games and demos from the start. You have to do this weird scavenger hunt before you can even access new sections of the museum. This is such a weird game because it is at the same time computer science for 5-year-olds. Not only that, but this is Nintendo, one of the least transparent companies ever, giving us a real look at their hardware development and thought process. One of my favorite things about this game is how they describe the R&D that went into the attachments for the Joy-Con 2. The issues they wanted to address from the original Joy-Cons, the many ideas they had, failure states they tested for. The diagrams made to convey all of that information is what makes this game worth playing to me. Stuff like the Joy-Con wheel is not worth it, and why I kind of don't like this game. Because as much as it is really cool and novel to see Nintendo release a heat map of their CPU and say the words "system on a chip," it's not worth them going on endlessly about stupid little marketing gimmicks, or things they are clearly just trying to make sound impressive. I'm not going to read about your microphone and headphone jack, those have been around a long time. I don't care about your camera, I don't care about its privacy shutter. It's hard to care about most of this game, and there is no reason you should either. Go watch my video if you want to watch someone try way too hard to have a good time with this game. Is this the last thing? No? What's the last thing? The frickin' logo? Yes. The logo. I was joking. Apparently not. That's actually what it was. 29. Slime Rancher 2. Slime Rancher 2 was easily my most disappointing game of 2025. Slime Rancher 1 is a game that I enjoyed immensely and has a very simple loop done in a fun way. It is, at its very core, a farm sim, with the major twist being that it is in first person, and your main interaction with the world is done through this big goofy vacuum gun. You vacuum up slimes and food and put them on your farm, and you feed the food to the slimes to get the money they produce. It's really that simple. In fact, to start the complaining right away, I'd say that Slime Rancher 2 has such a loyalty to this loop that it's hardly distinguishable from the first game at all. The method of which you go about cultivating your slimes, making them happy, and making money is borderline identical, but that's kind of okay because the secret of the original Slime Rancher is that your ranch is really a small portion of it, and progressing through the large world that exists outside of your ranch was the secret real game behind just raising your slimes. You need to find keys or have enough resources in order to get even deeper into this world and discover rarer slimes. And it's that second half where the sequel does distinguish itself. The problem is, I wish it improved upon any of it. If the ranching were identical and yet the world was just as fun to explore and progress through as the first Slime Rancher, this wouldn't really even rate as a disappointing game for me. It's the fact that they changed so many things and I can't identify one that's for the better. In fact, I'm going to include the things that they didn't change as a negative because I ran into the same problems in the ranching experience that I did in the first game. That being that the ranch is untenable. I have described the entire loop to you in a few steps, but the whole process is time-consuming. Feeding your slimes, gathering the money they make, and keeping them separate is quite the task on the ranch, and by the time I would finish my chores and set off to go explore the world, I was basically ready to start doing my chores all over again. The way that most farming sims get past this is to either have smaller, more tenable crop yield higher profits, or introduce automation. Slime Rancher does a little bit of the former and attempts to do the latter. Automation in this game basically comes solely down to these drones that were also present in the first game. I think they also intended these cannons to be put into use, but I actually found no fucking use for them despite their expense. No, the drones are where it's at, and they do an okay job. They can either feed your slimes, tend to the storage, or they can sell your crop. No matter how you do it, they will never be a perfect system of automation, and you still have to micromanage them on some level because of the fuel they run on. But none of that matters, because you can't afford them. They are too expensive. To simplify it down to one word before I go on and say many words about it, the problem with this game is grinding. The thing they will never advertise about this game is that beyond the slimes and what they give you is an entire other tree of resources that you need to grind for. The first game had this too, and I didn't love it there either. Every area had its own set types of resources, and you had to place these machines in the areas to mine them. However, I was largely able to forgive this because that whole process was passive. In Slime Rancher 2, the resources are just available on the map and in slightly varying locations upon depletion. This would be fine if you could just get what you needed by exploring the world and picking up as you go, but that simply isn't the type of game that this is. Your inventory is extremely limited, and the tech that these resources unlock requires vast quantities. It would make far more sense if you could actually farm these resources like you could the slimes, but you cannot. I would grind for a new thing that I thought would make my life easier, and it did nothing. I would grind for something that I knew would make my life easier from the first game, and they nerfed it, or changed it, or it just didn't do the thing I wanted. So when I was lamenting about the price of drones, I was actually lying. They aren't really that expensive in money. They're expensive in resources. Since resources are unable to be generated on the ranch anyway, the drones are actually irrelevant, because you'll never be at your fucking ranch. You will be out collecting resources. There was a point in this game where I basically just gave up attempting to ranch at all, because money really couldn't do anything for me. And that's the only thing the ranch can generate. In the first game, money at least got you through your entire tech tree, and only some of the buildable structures required actual resources. This game has no such luxury. Everything requires resources, so there's really just no reason to be staying on your ranch collecting money. And just to be clear, the ranch is your goal. At the very least, it was for me. It's a place to house my various collected slimes. They are the things you discover when you progress further into the world, so at some level you do want your ranch to be sustainable. And this game just refuses to allow you to do that. So the resources essentially destroyed my ranching experience. But, like I said, that is only the obvious part of the game. The secret exploration part is still there and all brand new. How does that fare? Honestly, it's much, much worse. And when I say much, much worse, I'm not saying that the quality of the exploration or the world is worse. It is in fact better visually and it's more stylized. It is worse in that it takes so much more work to get through these areas. There are points that need various resources in order to open, and that's carried over from the first game, but I would like to spoil one big portion of this game. So, here we are. A full half of this game's map is contained in something called the Grey Labyrinth. It is absolutely massive, requires 2 separate loads from your ranch to get there, and is chock full of gates, locks, and keys that you need to grind your way to get through. Not only is it a true labyrinth like the name implies, but there are so many points at which I thought I was done grinding, only to get another gate slammed in my face. This is what made me quit. Not only was it a grind, it was an exceptionally annoying one. It couldn't be passive like the resources of old, and it couldn't be earned like anything done in the ranch. It was pure luck and patience. I absolutely love how this place looks and operates on a puzzle level, but it's not fun to get through. I think this game was fully destroyed by expectations. The first game is something that so many people spent a lot of time with, and I do believe that they felt pressured to make this game something that you could sink even more of your time into. They just did it in the worst possible way. It would take dozens of hours to get through this game played properly, and that's if you continue to neglect the ranch as I did. Reminder, there's no reason not to, it doesn't gain you anything. I wasn't skipping out on mechanics, I was skipping out on the point of the game, in order to get to the rest of the game. It's a grind to the worst degree. I can't genuinely think of anything outside of maybe some visuals that I would say is an actual improvement over the first. Quite easily, my most disappointing title of the year. 28. A game about digging a hole. This is the most say-something game there is. It's a game about digging a hole, and boy is it. If it weren't in 3D, it would be a perfect Flash game. It's just a simple upgrade loop. Dig a hole to get things to dig a hole better. It's a nice little afternoon distraction with an amusing ending, but that's really it. 27. 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈, a Frosty Glide. 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈, a Frosty Glide is an interesting vibe mix of a game, because you are exploring and platforming around a charming Hallmark miniature mountainside Christmas town, but it's not exactly cheery, it's more so eerie. This is a magical place that has long been abandoned, but it's still pristine and beautiful. It's not just the emptiness, it's the writing too. You find notes lying around describing ancient lore, arcane folktales, and personal accounts that can be downright dark. Not scary proper, just a little macabre, which I suppose fits considering you are playing as a witch. 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈 is a young witch in search of her lost cat familiar. It is a very basic story and doesn't really need to be any deeper than that. It ain't got much doing mechanically either though. It's a fairly linear 3D platformer with its main mechanic being your skate broom. Although I was slightly disappointed because it doesn't gain you as much speed or freedom as skating implies. The only thing that really even resembles the kind of gameplay you would expect from skating I would classify more as snowboarding. In very specific sections, downhill. The rest of the time, it's a, well, Frosty Glide, and occasional double jump. There is progression for your movement as well, and at the risk of spoiling a 2-hour game, I will say one of the more interesting aspects of it is the fact that it turns from such a linear experience into one that is quite free-form and open thanks to the progression of that movement. I kind of have trouble with games like this, because, well, it isn't anything that will change my life or anything, but considering the low time investment, it asks so little and does provide exactly the kind of entertainment I wanted from it. I think I've accurately surmised its impact on me in 2 paragraphs, and if nothing I have said would influence you closer to trying it, I don't think the actual game would either. 26. Toree Saturn. I feel like the Toree series is the hidden gem that everyone talks about, due in no small part to filling a very specific niche on the market. They are budget titles, even by the standards of indie games, with most at only about $1. And for that $1, I would say that they are nothing short of content rich, so long as you understand that that content will only last you about 1 or 2 hours. Their modest price range and relative quality makes them something of a standout, at least among other eShop titles. While this year's title, Toree Saturn, is technically only the third to sport the Toree name, it's really part of a much longer series of games by the developer 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒆𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈. I haven't even played all of them, but the core to all of these games is this. Take a popular yet nostalgic property or gameplay style, refine and simplify its gameplay with only the slightest twists, and put those parts together in nice creative levels. Add some secrets and collectible for good replay value and you have yourself a 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒆𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈 game. I don't mean to come off as callous or derogatory even. I like just about all of these games, and I really don't think they are hiding what they're trying to be. I mean, I feel like if you put 64 in the title of anything, you are begging and pleading with your knees on the ground to be compared to titles like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. Toree is where the series seems to have gotten the most popular, with the latest title, Saturn, garnering the closest thing to hype that a title of this caliber could really muster. As you might have guessed with a title like Saturn, it takes a more Sega-inspired approach. And, you know, there's something so pure about the fact that the title that takes the most from Sonic is perhaps my least favorite of all of these games. It doesn't matter what form you feed me Sonic, I'm almost certain to dislike it. Torees of the past were kind of an amalgamation of a lot of 3D titles. They were level-based, course-clear 3D platformers. Level exploration wasn't really encouraged, and getting through the levels as fast as possible was the most satisfying. And as similar as Saturn is aesthetically, it's crazy just what the removal of a run button can do to a 3D platformer. Instead, the main speed mechanic this time around is a homing attack, with the whole twist of the game being chaining these homing attacks to boost in a way that lets you clear the level efficiently. I don't know, maybe this is one of those things where my skill issue impacts how much enjoyment I get out of something. I could never get anything higher than a C rank, but the homing system just never felt good to me. I easily cleared the game, but I just did not feel incentivized to master it. In �𝒐𝒎𝒆𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈's other games, mastery came down to either collecting things or memorization of the levels. There weren't really mechanics you had to overcome. Toree Saturn is a beatable game with little to poor understanding of the homing, but it is not a great feeling one. It's also the one time where length really is an issue, because I did not feel as though what was on offer justified the new homing style gameplay. Maybe with a few more levels the homing would have clicked and the whole thing would have felt a lot more natural in retrospect. I won't go so far as to say the mechanic is bad, because I truly did not care enough to master it. But I will say, in comparison to how simple yet tight this developer's other games are, this is relatively sloppy and unremarkable. I will gladly throw on any of the other games if I want a short little gaming experience, but I highly doubt I will come back to this one, which is a new feeling for this series. 25. Henry Halfhead. 2025 has been a weird year for me when it comes to gaming, because it feels like I played so little that left a real impact on me. I know I put all of these in order and I do try and say something about them, but at the end of the day, this is an opinion piece, and also a reflection on myself just as much as the games. And for all of the mixed feelings I've had about games this year, it's not because the variety has been poor. One of the things I'm actually fairly proud of is just how strange and out there the games I've played have been. So much so that a game where you play as a man who is only half a head that has the ability to possess any inanimate object as you follow the story of his life from birth to old age only just cracks my top 3 weirdest entries this year. Henry Halfhead is as weird as it is charming, and this is one of those games that is just as much puzzle as it is toy box. I don't know if it really has a name, but there is a genre of puzzle game where the mechanic is so odd or abstract that the majority of the game is just a vehicle to get you to understand the extent of its depth. I mention this because while I do think Henry Halfhead fits into this made-up genre, its constant exploration of the main mechanic is more of an expression of joy and whimsy than actual complexity. At the risk of being reductive, I would say this is baby's first puzzle game. I mean, the cake from Portal even shows up in this game, and it's not a lie. As for what you actually do in this game, Henry can possess basically every object that the game puts in front of you. They all have unique movement mechanics based on their shape, and most of them even have a specific action you can perform tied to them. Each set of objects has its own little set piece or task to do. Mechanically, my favorite might just be the one that asks you to make a stack as high as you can, because each object has its own collision physics and movement. It's actually pretty fun to just try and get them all placed right. But even more than the mechanics, I think what's going to stay with me from this game is the fact that it attempts to tell someone's entire life story. It's in a cute storybook kind of way, but they hit all of the notes: infancy, childhood, school days, capitalism, and retirement. This game's goofy, abstracted version of all of these periods of life are really the highlight of this game. The later game especially had some really clever writing and even editing, I would say. More like flagging, I suppose, because you're actually playing it, but it's neat. I can't say it was so impactful or deep to be very emotionally moving, but it is cute, and I would highly recommend it if you're looking for a game to play with your kids. That's a book. A gray book. What's in it?
Focus only on your goals.
Self-help. Oh no, he's reading Jordan Peterson. He's fucked.
Therein lies a dangerous mistake.
24. Spilled. I have a lot of thoughts I need to get out about cozy games, and that will become apparent much more later in this list. What I can say for Spilled is that I think that some themes don't deserve to be treated with an air of coziness. Spilled is adorable. It's wholesome, it's cute, and it is cozy. But it's also about pollution, and like the name implies, oil spills. I don't know, am I taking this far too seriously by saying I don't think that the 40-minute game about a little red tugboat sufficiently addresses the horrors that come with pollution, or the arduous, seemingly never-ending attempts to counteract it? I mean, obviously, right? But it doesn't sit right with me. The tone is just so light. It's not like I'm asking for it to be grimdark. For a good example of this, take something like Lottleknots. The framing there is a bit more cynical and cheeky, which helps, but even more than that, it was clear that the pollution you were cleaning visibly made the animals there miserable. Maybe I'm missing the mark entirely. Spilled plays fine, and it is beautiful. It just doesn't rise to meet its theming, and was over before it could really leave any impact. 23. Funky Heart. Finally, a game is brave enough to ask the question, what if you were a cute bunny girl surrounded by other girls that constantly flirted with you? Frankly, I don't think I could fathom such a situation, which is why I'm grateful that Funky Heart allows me to live out such a wild fantasy. Anyway, this game's bullshit. If the name wasn't already taken, I'm sure this game would have been called Bunny Hop, because that's the main mechanic. It's a first-person platformer with a dedicated bunny hop button. Not a jump button, that's separate. A bunny hop button. Press E or R to activate bunny hop mode, where you constantly bunny hop. If you're not aware, bunny hopping is a speed tech in a lot of first-person games. Sometimes you have to hop sideways or backwards, but the result is generally the same. You go a lot faster. And this mode functions much the same way. In bunny hop mode, you are dangerously fast, but you can also platform much greater distances. This is very much emulating speed tech, but that doesn't mean that it's not a great contender for a speed game. With a game this small, built by such a small team, influences are obvious, but the passion is real. If you had told me this was a mod for some movement shooter or a Source game, I could reasonably believe you, considering it just seems like a love letter to modded speedrun community levels. What this game does with its bunny hop mode actually calls back to something I talked about in my Mario Maker troll level video. In Mario Maker, people would make speedrun levels. However, that name is somewhat of a misnomer. All levels in a Mario game can be speedrun. They're all timed. So what makes a speedrun level is the fact that it makes you feel like a speedrunner. You are constantly going fast, and the level design encourages and in some cases requires higher execution. Funky Heart is very similar. I'm frankly shocked that there wasn't a timer included by default, but as I will get to, this is a very bare bones experience. It captures that feeling of a speed game because of the speedy, slippery bunny hop nature, the quick restarts, and the high execution. However, I'm not too sure it will fare well even in the speedrunning community. First, as a casual player, allow me to warn you that the difficulty curve is all out of whack. The second level of 5 or so is easily the hardest, and it's not really even close. I very nearly gave up. Second, I'm not a speedrunner myself, but if I had to guess, I would say that the cycles of this game would bother a speedrunner far more than they even bother me. See, one of the benefits of these speedy tech games is that you can get into a pretty significant groove where you have the muscle memory of previous sections so that you can just continue pushing against the parts you are failing. One way this is achieved is by having very consistent cycling, meaning that everything on the level would happen the exact same way every time a new attempt began. Funky Heart doesn't do this. The world state basically stays the exact same upon retrying, meaning that obstacles and moving platforms are in the same position they were in when you died. This has the negative effect of having obstacles seem basically random. The platforming itself is not trivial, so you will want to have these fine lines where you're skating through bunny mode, turning it off and sticking the landing, only to have an obstacle somewhere in that line be in an inconvenient place that it very rarely is. But very rarely across several dozen attempts becomes quite annoying. The bunny hop mechanic also becomes rather frustrating as time goes on. In the earlier levels, it's mostly just a cool way to explore and get around these larger areas, and you can rely on your normal double jump to do all the finer platforming. As you get better at it, you can find these fast lines through long platforming sections, but there is a lot of this game where gaps are too long for your double jump, but too precise to be constantly bunny hopping. So what you'll end up doing is initiating bunny hops, turning off bunny hop mode while you're in the air, and hopefully still sticking the landing. I really hope this is an intended mechanic, because if it's not, these levels are poorly designed. But even if it is intended, it's still really inconvenient considering hitting a key on your keyboard right next to your movement keys is not optimal for something you have to be doing mid-air, and for some reason, the controls are not rebindable. I am very glad I came back to this game and finished it, because all of these problems really only show themselves in that second level. I can't express just how bad it is, except to say there is one section near the end where the checkpointing is incredibly stingy, and you have to do what is essentially the exact same jump 12 times in a row. It's bad, and the level design never looks like this again. Right after this level, the design goes back to what it always should have been, which is completable with only your double jump 90% of the time, with your bunny hop being a way to get through the levels faster and more efficiently. The bunny hop is a speed mechanic, so it should be used the way that speedrunners use it, to go fast. But with all that said, I was compelled to come back, and I think it was because of the vibe of this game. It is very much of its time, and that time is right now. 2025. The dialogue looks like it could have been pulled off of Tumblr, the movement feels like something from the boomer shooter renaissance, the characters look like this, and the story is a healthy combination of sweet and ironic. I wouldn't be surprised if this game was made for exactly one person, and that one person being the person that made it. All of these words that I've said about it so far are for you, the person who has not yet played it and may in the future. It's not for the developers. I think they made exactly what they wanted to. They left pieces of themselves all over it, and I think that is a very sweet thing. I vibed with a lot of it, but I'm not a speedrunner or a lesbian, so I'll never vibe with everything, and that's okay. 22. Blueprints. What is it with the hit indie puzzle game of the year always rubbing me the wrong way? At least I finished Lorelei. I simply couldn't with the blueprints, and I don't foresee myself going back to it. I feel like no matter what I say, I'm going to cement myself as the massive dumbass too stupid for puzzle games, but before I'm judged too harshly, let me try to explain myself. For one, far more than Lorelei, I can say this is just a me thing. I just did not feel like playing this game more. It wasn't even that I didn't like what I was playing, it was just that I didn't want to commit to it in the way I feel I would need to get the whole experience. Blueprints is a long game, but not long for any of the reasons it should be. A big thing that I feel does not get conveyed in the general conversation around this game is that saying it's a puzzle game is kind of disingenuous because it's a strategy game just as much, and more than both of those things, it's a roguelike. There are runs in this game, and the minute-to-minute gameplay is strategizing how to make it through your run efficiently. I'd argue the puzzle aspect is much more of a macro thing, figuring out the nature of the mansion you explore and how everything fits together. What bothers me personally is that figuring something out does not equate to solving it. Figuring out how pieces of the puzzle fit together does not mean that you can just put them in their place. You now have to participate in the roguelite and strategy elements of the game that allow you the chance to test your theories. When you figure out how a certain room works, that's great, but now you need to figure out how to encounter it in your run more consistently, how to place it in the mansion in a way useful to you, and how to get the things around it to even fit together to make the conditions of the room work in the first place. There are rooms that are massive, multi-step puzzles that can take a lot of work just to figure out, only for you to then realize that it's going to take you a lot of strategy to even get an idea of one aspect of the puzzle. And look, I'm trying to be as fair as possible, like maybe I just missed things, or I'm dumb, or stupid, or an idiot. But the one thing that I really couldn't abide by is the luck. There is nothing as crushing as spending an entire run trying to test one of your theories about a puzzle room and putting in as much strategy as you reasonably could do for the game to just straight up deny you any cooperation. It's obviously not out of spite, it is just completely random. The game has no idea what you're trying to do at any given moment. It really is just a case of bad luck. It's just that so much work goes into setting these things up for yourself just to have a bad roll, or 5, go the wrong way and ruin all your plans. It feels so bad. For those in the know, I'll just say 3 hours laboratory. I vibe with this game so much. The painterly, scratchy blueprint, yes, I see what you did there, art style, the Pacific Northwest setting, and even the method of storytelling, which is very hard to pull off in a roguelite. I just wish I could have experienced more of the game, but I was petrified to put in an entire play session making no progress. I simply couldn't do it. Call me all the names you want, I really don't think it's this game's fault. I just got unlucky and scared by a playtime that yielded less and less the more I put in. Maybe 2026 will be my year to prove that I can actually solve a puzzle. 21. Keeper. As much as I hate nothing nondescript genres such as adventure, games like Keeper are the reason they stick around. It's a catch-all genre when you really don't know how to label something. Keeper is Double Fine's latest game and very much rhymes with their in-house style. It also leads me to what is possibly the meanest thing I could say about Keeper, which is that it feels like 2 subpar Psychonauts levels stretched out to multiple hours with one pretty good one at the end. Psychonauts is another one of those games that kind of defines the genre on a moment-to-moment level. You do so many different things and have so many unique set pieces that it's hard to say it's solely one thing. But you still had the action platformer glue to hold everything together. Keeper is another beast entirely, and I mean that literally because how many other games can you play as a lighthouse? If I had to call it one single genre, I suppose puzzle is the most apt, as some of the most interactive elements of the early game are puzzle mechanics. They are unique mechanics for what it's worth, but nothing so deep as to justify its own game like Portal or Viewfinder. It has an okay amount of variety mechanically, but I would struggle to recommend it on its gameplay alone. I think the true merit of this game lies in what it does better, which is provide you with a tour of a wonderfully bizarre space. I mean, just look at this game. Art direction is a term that gets thrown around quite a bit, but I feel gets lost in translation too often as something that just looks generally good. What art direction should be reserved for is a theme or feeling that the whole of the visual component of a game is deriving for. Keeper has incredible art direction. This game is weird, so it looks weird. Everything about it. The landscape writhes. The structures are ancient and primordial, the creatures are well and truly alien, and things that should not be alive are. Not only does it look amazing in any given moment, it looks amazing in motion. It's hard to truly put my finger on, but I never felt as though I was traveling through an entire world as much as I was traveling through some incredible living dioramas. There are so many aspects of this world that are moving and alive. The creatures just go on living as though you weren't really interrupting them. It's so easy to buy into this world as a living thing, I really feel like I could just sit down and watch as if it were an alien trail cam. I just wish this game had a stronger core to fall back onto. It's not as though the lighthouse controls poorly or there are no interesting puzzle mechanics in this game, it just feels as though the focus was solely on moving you through this space for you to look at. Like I said, it's more of a tour than a game, and I don't want to come down too hard on it for that. I think it more or less accomplished what it wanted to, and that is always something I value quite highly in a game. But it's hard for these landscapes to mean anything to me without the mechanical investment that games can bring. It might be the strongest contender if you want something nice to look at, but if you want deeper puzzle mechanics, there are better games to play, and if you want something that grips you with its narrative, you're probably better off finding a game that doesn't dump its lore in the Steam achievements. In our next game, you play as an Australian Labour Union representative. After negotiations break down with the corporation attempting to assimilate your members, you travel to the other sectors they have already taken over and help the employees there know that there is still a fight to be had, all leading up to full-scale revolution with fiery repercussions. The game? Isopod. The game where you are an isopod that can roll up into a ball and use a magnet as a grappling hook. No, I'm not reading into this too deeply, it's not even a metaphor, it's the stated text. This ant is a revolutionary named Carl, and this one is named Mark. And they're in love. Fight a giant beetle, traverse the meat caves, become the pride flag, befriend the wizard spider. You need to stop asking questions and go play this game. Consider it done. Bloody good on ya. That was the one accent you're gonna get out of me. I mean, if they're going to give me a bloody good on ya, I have to at least attempt an accent. There really isn't much of an option. The only thing that would have made it more obvious is if they had made me, if they wrote, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. 19. Kitty Builder. In what is seemingly becoming my crutch genre, Kitty Builder is yet another small open world game. Despite committing the cardinal sin of being a 3D platformer with a 2D sprite-based character, I find that its twist is pretty enjoyable, that being the builder part. For the opening minutes of this game, I was quite perturbed, feeling very limited by my movement, but knowing what I know about the small open world genre, was excited to expand my kit down the line. But that moment never came. Instead, I got buildings. Not long after starting, the game tasks you with building a small little town for the mayor of the island you crashed on. The building mechanics are basic, very intuitive, and require essentially no development. No resources, no wait time, no minigame, you just pick a building from a menu, hit a button, and the building is built. There weren't really even goals or restrictions on what I had to build. I guess you could say I just vibes down a little neighborhood, and it seemed to be good enough for the mayor. The game points you in a general direction of other people who need things built, and lets you loose. I was still having trouble getting around until it clicked that there was nothing stopping me from just building more buildings. Not only that, but the buildings were varied in height and utility. Suddenly, I had a very expressive kit and every new building was exciting to get. Not just taller or easier to climb, but different shapes and effects. My most used building was probably the bouncy umbrella. The only thing that really stopped me from ever building something was the guilt I felt for stranding a bunch of civilians on a precarious cliff, because I wanted their apartment building to elevate me just a little higher. I can imagine the type of person who goes around setting buildings up in just the right way so they're not only useful but aesthetically pleasing too. Little neighborhoods that act as stairs to other levels, or beachside resorts that make a perfect bouncy umbrella playground. The story is goofy and lighthearted, but it's great for getting you thinking about the shallower aspects of the building mechanic. A few characters just want you to build something that fits a theme, so you're engaging with the mechanic both on a selfish navigational level, but also an aesthetic one. It's a very tight gameplay loop of exploring using your buildings in creative ways to find new buildings that better fit certain themes or overcome certain obstacles. That, in combination with the shorter runtime, makes this a really lovely entry to the small open world genre. Oh fuck. I already have to talk about Wanderstop? Oh my god. 18. Wanderstop. This is obviously an incredibly cozy game. I found out about it from the Wholesome Direct, and it's drenched in every stereotypical cozy aspect you could come to think of. However, I never thought it would be as cozy as it is, and that was massively disappointing. I got completely annihilated by my own expectations for this game. A lot of my critique is going to be unfair, but let me just paint you a picture of where I was coming from with this game. Wanderstop is not what it seems at the outset. This game was written by co-creator of the Stanley Parable and The Beginner's Guide, Davey Wreden. Two exceptionally well-written games, but even more than that, exceptionally biting commentary from both of them. Between this and some slight hinting during the trailers, I formulated an idea in my head. This game will be the one to finally critique cozy gaming. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I've had this idea in my head for the longest time that how we consume some games, especially games that are adorning themselves in a cozy and relaxing atmosphere, is kind of unhealthy. If not unhealthy, at the very least a little dishonest. Basically, I wanted to have a game that addressed the fact that cozy gaming can be an escapism so self-indulgent it makes power fantasy look tame. I have a lot of thoughts about this topic, obviously, and I really let it brew, no pun intended, in the lead up to this game coming out. But that is not Wanderstop. Wanderstop isn't the incredibly critical, razor-sharp commentary I was hoping for when it comes to cozy gaming as a genre. It took me the entire game to realize this, because every single moment I was playing, I was essentially waiting for a plot twist that was never going to come. And I do mean the entire time I was playing it. Viewer, I was so bad, I basically made a fanfiction of a game that had not even come out. I was destined to always be disappointed by this game, no matter what it was actually about. Months later, having completed the full game, do I think that my disappointment is justified? The problem is, I can't really even step outside of my own narrative here, because the game does indeed have something to say that I absolutely agree with and can wholeheartedly embrace. It's just not nearly as far as I had hoped it would go. So, what is this game trying to be about? If not a takedown of the entire cozy gaming genre and our behaviors towards them, then what? Well, that's tricky to pin down exactly. I think it has a lot to do with how we interact with the problems we have, how we identify them, how we process them, but most of all, how we deal with them. When it comes to the stated text and what the protagonist is actually going through, it's those first two that strike the hardest. Alta doesn't know why she feels tired and why she can't find her way out of the forest. A large portion of this game is just her coming to terms with the fact that she even has a problem to begin with. And what that problem exactly is still nebulous, but that's also kind of the point. I actually think the game's stronger writing comes from the side characters. They all have problems, but how the game portrays them is very interesting. Some of their problems are goofy and cartoonish, and others are glaringly obvious, but when Alta tries to point them out, it comes off as harsh. It's very clear that how they want to deal with their problems is counter to how Alta is used to dealing with any problem: direct confrontation. I don't think the game is trying to say that Alta is explicitly wrong, or that the characters interpreting their own problems in weird ways are explicitly right, because there is very little resolution in this game at all. So many characters will come to you with small problems, reveal more of the complexity, and maybe even attempt to address it without actually coming to a full resolution. I actually think that this is one aspect that is flat out brilliant. It's not always narratively satisfying, but I think it's stronger for it. From my perspective, the point the game is trying to make is any problem that isn't directly your own is going to be viewed through cloudy lenses. And not only that, but learning about and helping someone with a problem does not entitle you to an ending of their story, if there is in fact one to be had at all. This game does not shy away from the fact that some problems simply cannot be solved. Going even farther, the one thing I can wholeheartedly get behind in this game is that not only does it address that some problems simply can't be solved, it seems to offer that just about no problems can be solved with a distraction, even a very relaxing, cozy distraction. In the game, that is obviously the tea house setting, the Wanderstop. Side characters and Alta herself stop by for various amounts of time, but progress isn't made at the tea house. It's only when you leave. What makes me feel like I am being completely unfair to this game is that if it came off any more cynical, the effort they put into making a cozy game would be somewhat lost. The text is very clear, multiple times, that it is perfectly acceptable to slow down and relax. It can even be quite good, but it should always be understood that it is something that you are doing for yourself, that may not help you in any way. There's a chance, absolutely, but it's not a guarantee. You shouldn't be doing these relaxing things because that is a step in the process. You should be doing them because you want to. The game backs this up mechanically by being a cozy game. And I mean that by genre archetype. The main gameplay loop is relatively simple and there is no explicit failure state. There is farming, chores to do, animals to play with, pots to decorate, pictures to pose, and even trinkets to collect. It has all the staples of a cozy game because it is one. But it doesn't want to mince words or lose track of its point. So, throughout the game at various chapters, everything you do at the Wanderstop completely resets. The plants you grow on the farm are no longer there. Extra resources you gathered are lost, and even collectibles and photos that you curated throughout the halls of the Wanderstop are moved around, removing any sense of ownership you may have had in their placement. I imagine that this is some people's least favorite aspect of the game, at least the first time it happens. It is made very clear that it's going to happen again, but it never discourages you from doing those things. It doesn't say what you're doing is pointless, or that you should stop decorating. If you enjoy it, you should still do it, and if you don't want it to get undone, you simply don't have to move on yet. After all, why would you be so frustrated with all of these seemingly pointless things going away if that's exactly what's going to happen anyway when you stop playing? I was ready for a very deep, very critical conversation about cozy games and the escapism that they provide, especially in the time that we live in. I can't say that Wanderstop doesn't feel the same way I do about cozy games, because it clearly has some of the same points in mind. I was ready to go farther, but Wanderstop felt as though it couldn't make the point it wanted to without being, at its core, the exact type of experience that its narrative is critical of. Wanderstop doesn't work for me because despite how brilliantly the narrative is tied to the mechanics, it is, at the end of the day, still 100% just a cozy game. 17. Flyknight. Listen, this is the say something format, not the say everything or even say a well-rounded summary of that particular thing. Merely something. And the something that I think of when I think of Flyknight is the length. This game is short, essentially one solid play session. Now, do a thought experiment with me and evaluate your feelings, because if you now have a negative impression of the game, we can no longer be friends, because I think that this is solely a positive reading. Whether playing alone or in co-op, this game is the perfect one session length and gave me exactly the type of experience I was hoping for in that amount of time. It is a wonderfully crafted little dungeon crawl with some good variants in encounter design and even bosses, all without making me feel like I had to sink in an entire weekend just to learn its systems. The friction of learning takes about 20 minutes and the experimentation is easy and encouraged. I have not played too many of the games that I suspect are this game's inspirations. The biggest compliment I can pay this game is that it gave me the exact type of feelings I would want from those experiences. 16. Annual Ghost Town Pumpkin Festival. Annual Ghost Town Pumpkin Festival is a weird one because you probably can't even play this game right now. This game is an event, only available in October. It is exactly what the title implies, a pumpkin festival. Carve your own pumpkin, display your own pumpkin, look at other people's pumpkins. and it's genuinely one of the best times I had playing a game on stream. Just walking around looking at other people's creations was fantastic, but everything else in the game world was just the cherry on top. First of all, the ambiance is perfect. It's split between a pumpkin farm-esque field area and a rural downtown harvest fest. The entire thing is covered in Halloween and fall decorations. There's music and interactive elements everywhere. There's even plenty of things to do outside of the pumpkins. There's a corn maze, there's a hayride, there's a platforming lookout tower, there's a movie theater playing copyright-free horror movies, there's secrets to find, and there's even an escape room. It's everything I love about the fall season, and it gave me a chance to boast about my real-life carving efforts. I am a real-life pumpkin master. This is not my pumpkin. This is my mother's pumpkin, actually. As someone who can't get enough of the fall season, I wouldn't be surprised if this gets rolled into my annual fall traditions, and I had to mention it at some point. Oh no, hell of a... And by oh no, I mean... Yeah, sorry! Sorry. This one almost gets the reward for the sorry on the back. 15. Peak. For a lot of my years playing video games, I was quite cynical when it came to co-op gaming. It's embarrassing, but I was basically just jealous that these amazing experiences were being made for people that had friends that wanted to play games in the first place. I still stand by the fact that games requiring another human person are some of the least accessible in the industry, but as I've grown up and out of such a narcissistic point of view, I can appreciate co-op gaming a little more. When you actually have the resources, there is almost no gaming experience not worth having with friends. I got to play Peak this year. Not for a long time, yet at least, but I got to play it. And a lot of other people got to play it too. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the hardest part of this game as someone very nearly stepping into their 30s is getting people together to play it online. There is just so much going against co-op experiences like this. You need people, you need schedules to line up, you all need to be in the mood to play a game and not too tired from work or family or the world. Then, even if you know you all want to play a game, you have to be adventurous enough to go out of your comfort zone and play something new, and not something samey and familiar like Mario Kart for the millionth time. I can't describe it as anything less than a modern miracle that Peak saw amazing commercial success. I don't care if it's friend slop, I don't care if it's streamer bait. My friends and I all had fun playing it. Aggro Crab is no stranger to me. Their last game was almost number 1 on my list last year, so it was always going to be on my radar, but the widespread success is probably the only thing that made my friends comfortable enough to even try something like this. It's probably the game on this list I've played the least this year, but when the stars align again, I bet my friends would be happy to play. What can I say about the actual game? I don't know, man, no real notes. Add lizards, I guess. They're cute and probably tasty on a long climb. 14. Pokemon Legends 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒆𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈. How many people could I make mad just by pronouncing it that way? It's almost worth it. Pokemon Legends 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒆𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈. I don't advertise this a ton, but I'd consider myself a pretty big Pokemon fan. Of my top 10 most played Switch games, Pokemon easily takes up 3 of those slots, approaching 4. I have enjoyed most of Pokemon's offerings on the Switch, even Sword and Shield. Listen, I like the DLC, okay? What do you want from me? I can find the positives pretty easily, but I am by no means an apologist. I too wish they were better at some things, and think the franchise needs a critical look inward. However, one point of contention that has never sat well with me is how the franchise deals with stagnation. Stagnation is a very valid criticism to have of Pokemon, but I think that it's one no one is more aware of than Pokemon. I don't think any of us could truly imagine the position they're in holding what is essentially the golden goose, and to have a large portion of its buyers ask them to change it without killing it. It has to be no less than absolutely terrifying. It seems the way the Pokemon Company has chosen to address this is with various spin-offs and only slight changes to the formula every major generation. But Thank God this isn't saying something about every game I played 3 years ago, because I don't have to talk about Scarlet and Violet. That game is an absolute mess, and I still found myself enamored with it, and I just don't want to talk about it. No, instead I get to talk a little bit about one of my favorite games of all time, Pokemon Legends Arceus. I absolutely adored Arceus, and basically everything it was attempting to do. So, when a sequel was announced using the Legends moniker, I was thrilled. Not to say I had my hopes up incredibly high, this is still the Pokemon Company after all, but if I could just get a slightest tinge of the experience I had with Arceus, I would have been quite happy. So here we are in 2025, and we finally have Pokemon Legends ZA. And I could only barely manage to force myself to beat it. So what's going on? Why was this such a disappointment? Well, it goes back to how Pokemon is dealing with stagnation. They no doubt have a ton of ideas of what they could do. Lord knows every internet forum has been screaming ideas at them for the better part of 3 decades, but it doesn't matter how much testing you do behind closed doors, at some point you're going to have to give the public something to play. And when you give a public as massive as Pokemon's audience something to play, the cracks will show. I think it's kind of obvious that Legends is the Pokemon Company's vehicle for massive experimentation. It's still a little hard to say whether what happens in a Legends game will carry to a generation because of how long and overlapping the development cycles are, but I would not be at all surprised. Arceus experimented with wide open areas, real-time catching, and a much faster-paced battle system. All of those decisions were hits for me personally, and instead of basically making a sequel that just refined those same ideas, they instead treated Legends like the experiment that it is. PLZA is perhaps the biggest step we've seen Pokemon take away from tradition in something they're willing to put their name on. There's no point in beating around the bush. I think it comes down to the battle system. It is no longer turn-based, instead opting for real-time, position-based action battle. Everything that ZA tries to accomplish goes back to this system. And I want to say that again. Everything that ZA does is for the benefit of this system, because it is a big deal. This system has to work, and it has to be implemented flawlessly for this game to function at any level, and it is a departure unlike any the franchise has really tried to dabble in. I want to emphasize all of that, because I think they did a pretty good job with it. In Arceus, it was quite stark. The first time you encounter a Pokemon just wandering around the world, you aim your ball from out of sight, throw it, and catch it, just like you've seen in the anime. That moment alone made the game, and it continued to give moments like that all throughout. I can't lie to you. For all the problems I have with ZA, understanding just how borderless the combat is caught me quite off guard. I really did feel that connection to Arceus again, which, in lore, that sentence sounds crazy. Consider that one of the most requested features of any Pokemon game is one that had long been abandoned, that of following Pokemon. This was something in Heart Gold and Soul Silver that an entire generation latched onto, something that made us feel like we were really a Pokemon trainer. It's been one of the most talked about features in the entire fandom. Pokemon has done its best to try and give us that feeling again, but once things have gone to 3D and more restrictions were put in place, it was a lot harder to fully accomplish. Keep in mind that having your Pokemon follow you in those Gen 4 remakes did nothing outside of aesthetics. It was a purely emotional feature. In Pokemon Legends ZA, not only do your Pokemon follow you, but it's actively required to play this game. I sincerely hope that everyone that has been begging for following partners feels the magic I felt the first time I told my stupid little onion to kill someone else's pet. I'm sure other games have done this summoner-style battle system before, but I can't stress just how well it works for Pokemon. I'm not the best at it, but it has enough depth between the positioning, the cooldowns, and the area of effects. Maybe it's not even so much that it's deep, just so completely different from how Pokemon battles previously went. Truly, the fact that it works as well as it does is miraculous. Ask anyone who's tried to make a Pokemon fan game, especially now. Pokemon is a logistical nightmare, so having to essentially rewrite how every mon in this game works and how the moves line up, It shouldn't have even gone this well. So then, why was I still ultimately disappointed in this game? Well, I think it does come back to the battle system, but not how good or bad it was. It accomplished what it was trying to do, but the fact is, I've never really cared about battling in Pokemon. If you don't play a lot of Pokemon, I could understand how truly ridiculous sounding that statement is, considering it's the main thing you do. But along with a lot of the Pokemon's other experiments, it's been really trying to evolve how we interact and do things with Pokemon. I think Pokemon is trying to get away from being solely about battles. At least, that's how I felt with Arceus. I liked Pokemon for the ecology of it, watching these little guys interact with things. I like it because of the stories we get, all having to relate with people and the relationship with nature and these animals. I like finding these monsters in their natural habitat, and that specifically is something that I really did not get in ZA. In all fairness, it's a story about how hard it is to integrate an ecosystem into a city, but that doesn't make it more exciting to look at. All of the Pokemon are relegated to little zones that each have their own little checklist of mons. Despite actually presenting all of the Pokemon you can catch on screen, this might be one of my least favorite Pokemon games to catch Pokemon in, and that is truly tragic after Arceus. If battling and raising your team to be perfect killing machines is what gets you to connect to Pokemon at a thematic level, then I bet this game would really do it for you. But as someone who doesn't really care about any of that, it was hard to stick with. Don't be surprised if you catch me talking about Pokopia next year in a much more positive light, considering it seems to be another attempt from Pokemon to try and make you relate Pokemon with anything other than fighting. What I'm trying to say is, Pokemon Legends ZA is very complicated to talk about whether you love or hate Pokemon. There's a lot going on here, but I am very glad that Pokemon is attempting to experiment, even if they are continuing to sell those experiments to us. I'm not going to pretend that this game should appeal to everyone, or even me, but I'm not going to say that there's nothing good about it. I mean, they gave all the Pokemon footstep sounds, so can't be all bad, right? "13. Tall Trails. Sometimes you just want to be a little guy with a boot that's also a jetpack. Wearing a hat. End of sentence. End of video. Goodbye. Thank you. I'm tired." Tall Trails is the kind of game I love telling people about when they ask me what I'm playing, but it also makes people stop asking me what I'm playing, because what do you mean you've been playing a game as a little guy who collects pieces of clay using a boot that lets him shoot frogs, giving him an extra double jump just so that he can meet the wizard who is also God? And his dad. To be fair, you can make most games sound quite silly with just one sentence of a summary, but this game really does revel in casual absurdity. As you might have gathered from that little blurb, this is indeed a 3D platformer collectible, small open world game. Practically my bread and butter at this point. And yes, if you didn't pick up on it, the main reason to play this game is the movement, which does indeed revolve around a boot that can shoot things. Basically anything you can pick up, and what makes it so special is that a lot of these things you pick up have bonus attributes, and some of these attributes can even synergize. You suddenly not only have favorite objects to shoot, but favorite objects to store and use with other objects. That aforementioned frog is actually one of my favorites to just have in my pocket, simply because holding it gives your jump a big boost. The boot and item mechanic alone is incredibly fun to experiment with, but there's also a badge system that lets you stack even more passives. There is a ton of stuff to collect, and just about all of it gives you tangible rewards, which is really nice and makes constant exploration and collecting feel great. In fact, it kind of feels like it's intended to be done forever, which is great because this game is also randomly generated, and you can carry over your progress to seemingly endless amounts of new game pluses. I'm not the biggest hater of procedural generation because I do think it is very useful in certain aspects, but I do sometimes question it in games that already seemingly have a decent amount of content. In this game, the generation is done after you hit start. It generates a certain amount of worlds, a certain number of levels, each with motifs to them. The game is not insignificant. I feel like one playthrough is a good experience. So while part of me does think that the procedural generation is the slightest bit unnecessary, it also really didn't bother me. Some of the levels are a bit messy, but the algorithm in place to generate paths to your goals felt natural enough. There is also a part of me that just really appreciates how this game tries to explain using procedural elements in its story. These islands have weird random objects scaled to mountainous proportions. Sometimes your objective is going to be to climb to the top of a tower of frogs, or a gargantuan toilet. This world is inhabited by golems who have very basic purposes, so they're just kind of making things for the sake of making things, which, if you want to read it as some kind of commentary on the artistic process, I think is actually pretty funny. And needless to say, for all of this procedural generation, it does feel like the synergistic aspect of all of your movement and toolkit was built perfectly for endless replay and progression. It's absolutely worth it to see how broken and silly your moveset can be, and how janky yet beautiful those gigantic objects and landscapes can get. So if you ever just want to be a little guy, it really doesn't get much better. Find your purpose. That is up there on the upper left. I see that in my peripheral vision literally all the time, so I'm already relating hard to this little guy. 12. Mario Kart World. I don't have to explain Mario Kart to you. This is Mario Kart World. It is, at the time of writing, the newest one, and it was the singular system seller game for the Nintendo Switch 2 at launch. All I have to do now is justify my opinions about it, and they are not black and white, especially now, months after launch. Mario Kart has a singular purpose to be the most accessible game to everyone you could have at a gathering. Everyone understands what a race is, everyone understands how driving works, the weird little power-ups on the side are never that hard to grasp or are easy enough to ignore, and Mario Kart World mostly doesn't interrupt any of those things, so it's going to live and die by its track design and mode selection. Track design-wise, it is at a major disadvantage, being the successor to Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 8 was the Mario Kart for over a decade, and was built on the top of a core foundation of Mario Karts going back 2 more decades. It is still the strongest entry in the entire franchise, and really the genre as a whole. There just aren't better kart racing tracks in video games, full stop. Mario Kart World's courses are good, but they can't top what has previously been in basically any capacity. This is also probably the biggest shakeup in actual driving control since 64. Stuff like racing on top of the water feels like a big change, and the new rail grinding and jump trip mechanics open the game up a whole lot. Or at least, they should. In reality, I feel like they just add some flourishes for people who will do nothing but play this game online until the next Mario Kart comes out. There is a lot you can do, specifically with the jump. But why? Why was it not mapped to its own button? It can get you a lot of advantages, which is why I think it was made less accessible, but I just hate how holding the drift to do a secondary action like jumping feels, and I'll never be able to explain it to my family and friends picking up the game casually for one night. So while it really annoys me, it mostly just makes me sad. But all that was just the icing. The real cake of Mario Kart World is, of course, the world. This is an interconnected open world game that the tracks sit inside of, and honestly, I think it's kind of a letdown. There is a free roam option with some collectibles and challenges to get, but because a lot of them rely on heavy usage of the jump, I just don't feel good getting them. The interconnected nature of the world also affects how Grand Prix are played, making the 3/4 of what you're racing on the connections between the bespoke tracks, which has its downsides. Not to mention the battle mode has been completely robbed of relevancy. Missions like Star Runner or Cops and Robbers in the open world game blows my mind. So for all of my whining, it might sound like I absolutely hate this game, when I really don't. Track design may be weaker than 8, but that is true of literally every single kart racer to ever exist and probably will ever exist. And the general movement still feels great and fairly competitive even without considering the jump. As for that open world, it actually really makes sense when you consider the final mode available to you is Knockout Tour. Everything makes sense to me when considering Knockout Tour. Multiple tracks connected together in a grand cross-country style race with no breaks or downtime in between, and constant risk of elimination if you sit in the lower places. It's a frenzy. It's thrilling and it feels like an actual journey. I love just about everything Knockout Tour has to offer. In single player, it's intense and a little grueling, and multiplayer might fare better because even upon elimination, you can then cheer for or heckle your friends still in the race. There were times I was almost grateful to be eliminated after long periods of constant tension being released, where I can just finally watch my friends fight each other to the finish. If this game was only Knockout Tour, it would still probably be the exact same spot on my list. However, it would be so much higher if it just gave you more options. For all of my love of Knockout Tour, even that gets old relatively quickly considering the lack of options in course choice. Knockout Tour essentially only has 8 courses. They are just long collections of other tracks, and while that might seem somewhat reasonable, there is just no reason for this limitation. Every single track in Mario Kart World is painstakingly tied to its adjacent tracks. They put in so much work making this world make sense and then give you so few options to explore those routes in between. Knockout Tour should be able to start and end anywhere by chaining courses together, but instead it only allows you to see these pre-scripted routes. It is so disappointing that a mode that could effortlessly have infinite possibilities be limited to 8. I'm not simply asking them to add more. The work is already done. These interconnected routes already exist in the Grand Prix and Versus modes. They're simply not available for the Knockout. Allow me to connect these routes in whatever fashion, in whatever length I want, and this may have been my game of the year. But you can't, so it's not. Not even close. Maybe through DLCs or updates this game will feel like a better value proposition, but until then it is nothing less than wasted potential. 11. Monster Hunter Wilds. Monster Hunter Wilds is another Monster Hunter, which means that some things just don't need to be said about it. The monster design and animation is beautiful, the combat is fun and engaging, and the gameplay loop is downright addicting. It's not as though they have completely forgotten its roots or messed up what people love about these games, but it's definitely losing track of it. In regards to the actual combat, something you need to understand about Monster Hunter is it's actually pretty analogous to Pokemon. The very base of the experience only gets very minor refinements over the years, but they tend to add big gimmicks on top of them that stay with one game and gets disregarded the next. I have only been a fan of the series for a few entries, but I know that this has long plagued the fanbase, and I now get a taste of it myself because I really think they should have just kept the combat gimmick from Monster Hunter Rise, that being the wire bug. The wire bug is basically just a grappling hook that has limited rechargeable uses. And as far as the traversal and world design goes, I understand not really needing to bring it forward into the new games. However, what I feel they really screwed up on is the fact that the wire bugs didn't just add fun little ways to get around. They also added a number of moves and options for every single weapon that you can use. And when the weapons themselves drastically change up how you are moving around and approaching these hunts, taking away portions of their kit feels like a major misstep. In place of the wire bugs, we get the focus system, which I feel was a way to make the monsters more than just a heaping mass of hitbox, and instead tried to get you to focus on specific parts in a way that felt more elegant than in previous titles. I understand this is just how the series works, and some things are going to be hits and some things are going to be misses, but I can't deny that I felt more of the misses in this game. And that's just the combat. The part of the game I actually feel holds up the best. No, my real problem with this game is the titular wilds. Not because they're lacking in style or interactivity, but because for something so obviously the focus of their game, they try so hard to get you to not interact with it. All of this comes down to the secret for me. Secrets are your mount for this game, and they are so awesome looking, and they have so much customization, and they are a really cool idea on paper. But they kind of ruin the entire game. The secrets are expert trackers, and once you have your mission dialed in, they will know where your target is anywhere in the loaded area. And not only do they know where it is, they will take you right to it, completely automatically. Now, this is another thing where I don't want to be obtuse. I understand completely why they decided to do this. Monster fights are long, and in these fights, you do need downtime. That's more or less the appeal of the entire system. You need to grind your weapon, you need to eat some buffs, you need to collect some materials, you may even have to recruit some lost party members. Any number of things, and the way the series has gone about doing this is by having the monsters move from area to area at certain points in the fight. This is when you can do all of those downtime things, and when you are ready, you can begin the pursuit of the monster again. The secrets completely eliminate the need to stand still while doing all of those downtime things. They're all available while in motion. This means that fights are much faster paced, and the downtime feels non-existent. Not only that, but I suspect the actual distance you can cover in a single fight is a lot greater than in previous titles, even if it doesn't feel that way. But I think they overdid it. It's hard to describe, but so much of the experience gets destroyed by this automatic pursuit. The secret doesn't just know where the monster is, it knows where it's going to be, and the most optimal way to get there, even if it's completely abstract just upon looking at the environment. I am very sad that I don't know these beautiful worlds like I do the ones of previous games, but at the same time, I can't fathom having to learn them because they're built for the secret. You can manually pilot the secret and use the goofy paths that it chooses once you know where they are, but the secret will hone in on them instantaneously. You'll be traversing in ways that you couldn't have possibly known about unless you let the secret take you through them. Even if you do figure out some pathing, you can't really break from it. There's plenty of verticality in these levels, but I can't for the life of me tell you which ledges are usable as access points to lower areas, and which ones are completely sealed off by invisible walls. I feel like if you removed the automation from this game, you would have the yellow paint free game world that so many stupid people have been clamoring for. It's beautifully done in the AAA style, so vigorously rendered that it actively dropped people from its player base because they simply can't run the game. They gave everything for this world, and yet this is a world not truly designed to be traversed by the player. It is meant to be pretty hallways for your secrets to take you through and various arenas where the actual fights can happen. But if you try and navigate it yourself, those hallways become nearly indistinguishable, and you have no idea how those areas connect. To boil it down, they kind of took the hunt out of Monster Hunter. It's now just Monster Killer. All of the ways you need to track and follow a monster are gone, and even if you are really good at that, you're still not going to be the one actually going to the monster. It's just not worth it. I have no doubt that someone could absolutely learn all of the intricate ways these maps connect if they really wanted to waste their time. But the secrets are going to do it just as fast, if not faster, because they're a part of the simulation. They know what's going to happen before you do. You might as well just go along for the ride. All of those words amount to a very low percentage of your actual playtime, but it's that little percent that is the connecting tissue that I think caused a lot of people to tire of this game faster than most. I haven't played a lot of Monster Hunter games, but this is, by far, my least favorite. 10. God, I love video games. Disco Pup is pure style. It also kind of defies genre. I suppose it's a puzzle game, but you're mostly just interacting with a setting to try and understand all of its little intricacies. The story? I don't even think I'll try and explain it. You're a little Animal Crossing character that wants to go to the disco. This game has some absurdist humor and a good amount of meta-commentary and some straight-up horror. I love games like this because it really couldn't be made by committee or even a group much larger than this one. It has such a pure, honest representation of the creator's wills and inspiration that any further flattening of the concept would lead to losing that personality. It's also not just a gamer game referencing gaming. It has a lot of clear inspiration from movies, music, and artistic movements in general. It accomplishes what I think a lot of good art should do, which is to convey a specific feeling or intention from the artist. But I'm not gonna do what every bad critic of art does and attempt to tell you what those feelings or intentions are, and instead just going to say, "9. Kirby Air Riders." I think it goes without saying that I have a near infinite amount of nostalgia for the GameCube. It was my era, the one I grew up with, my first Nintendo console, and even after it was over, the one I revisited to get more familiar with the library. I will glaze basically every first-party effort and a lot of the third-party ones on this console. However, that cannot be said for Kirby Air Ride. I simply have no background with this game. I always thought it looked pretty neat based on the cover, which is how I judged games as a kid. The expense probably drove me away, and when I found out it was multiplayer, I'm sure that sealed the deal. Multiplayer games were fine and all, but I knew I never would really have someone to play with me in person, so I avoided them generally. Air Ride was the one that slipped by me during my most nostalgic era. So it is with no nostalgia that I say, Kirby Air Riders is one hell of a game. It feels so simple, but it can go so deep. It looks so bare bones, but it offers so much. Without getting too complicated, this is just a good-ass game. Everything, from what I can tell, is preserved from the original title, and more is added on top. The titular Air Ride mode is sarcastically fast, occasionally chaotic, and deeply fun. Every machine feels like a new way to play. Are they all good, well-balanced options? Hell no. Some of these machines suck ass, but that's still fun. Some of my favorites are the Formula Star that essentially can't turn, netting you a near-automatic loss, unless you roll one of the few courses with multiple straightaways, where it then becomes an instant win because of its insanely high top speed. Or the Jet Star, which makes you comically fast in the air, which, I don't know if you knew, is 1/3 of the game's name. Top Ride is deceptively simple, offering essentially the same depth as Air Ride, but from a new perspective. The story mode not only has cutscenes that rival the production value of Subspace Emissary, but is basically just an endless challenge mode full of interesting scenarios and a roguelite progression system. I am a single player, and this story mode does it for me. Of course, you have all the online offerings, and the best mode that everyone glazes to hear and back, City Trial, which I have played once. That's the entire game, and yet there's just so much care and love in every single crack. Between all my channels, I've spoken at length about authorship and how it can get pretty awkward and stupid, but it does feel like Sakurai just cannot separate his personality from the game. If he makes a game, he makes it the most. It's a very rare thing to witness in the modern era. It was actually announced well beforehand that this game was not going to get DLC, and I'm quite conditioned to expect it, so it makes me a little sad. However, that's quickly brushed off when you experience just the depth of what is on offer here. I've seen people put tens of hours into the machine customization alone. And, like I joked, I haven't really even touched what most people consider to be the deepest aspect of this game, being City Trial. I just had such a good time with the story mode and my few ventures into online that I felt confident in its spot here. I will be honest though and say that I have a much harder time introducing this game to people. Mario Kart has its problems, but it's absolutely the game I'm going to show people when I want to sit down and have a play session. I love Air Riders, but it can be an absolute clusterfuck to witness. Even as someone who has a little bit more awareness of what's going on screen, I don't have the synesthetic instincts to know 100% of the time through all of the lights and speed and particle effects. But that's the joy of it too. Sometimes it's just pure bullshit down to its core. It doesn't have to lower itself to reach a wider audience. If you loved Air Ride on the GameCube, this is that again and more. And if you didn't, it really is a flavor of gaming we don't get much anymore. God damn. Sakurai thinks Kirby is so cool, and it's frankly hilarious. And I love him for it. Despite, this is Kirby. Kirby. This is a Kirby game. Yes, this, a Kirby game. What about this isn't screaming Kirby to you? 8. Little Rocket Lab. I love automation games, even though they're one of the genres that kind of exist to facilitate mental illness. They are a great way to trick your brain into thinking you're being productive when in fact, you're just playing a video game. But really, they are exceptionally satisfying, and optimizing a system is a kind of puzzle that I like to do. Not so much because I love designing and rebuilding a truly optimized system, but because I can just barrel through using an unoptimized system to get a result anyway in a way that has zero consequences. Little Rocket Lab is quite high on this list despite me having some pretty gigantic problems with it. It is an automation game using the aesthetics and systems of a farm sim. You have all the ingredients, you have your own farm, you have a cozy town full of inhabitants with their own little story beats that you can befriend and give gifts to increase their level of affection. You have a world full of different items to collect, meals you can cook, and even a house to decorate. The problem is that this is not a farm sim. This is an automation game. What that means is that your primary task is optimization. And like I've said about so many other games, if you allow me to, I'm going to optimize the fun out of a game. Or, at least in this case, the story out of a game. This might just be stupid chud ignores stories to make numbers go up, but I very much avoided the town aspect of this game. If I may mount a bit of a defense for myself, I will say that the game basically egged me on to do so. See, the thing that makes the town of a farming sim make sense is progress really only happens in between days. You will go to bed and wake up and progress will have happened. You have to do some setup in order to make that progress work, or you will just have moved backwards, but it only happens at night. So you have a lot of free time to go and interact with the town and progress your relationships. The towns in farming sims also have more utility. In Little Rocket Lab, the only thing that you absolutely need in the town is the research building. That's what unlocks more of your building capabilities. All of the other shops and people are for purely aesthetic, and I'm including the story, purposes. But the more damning genre staple that this game adheres to is the bed. This is an automation game where you can pass time indefinitely. And while there are days, the seasons only change at the rate of your factory progression, so there is simply no reason not to get a line of production up and running, and then go to bed until you have all the product you want. Now, in earnest, that sounds a lot more broken than it is. It's not as though you're just infinitely generating endgame level stuff simply by mashing the bed, but it does mean there is essentially no downtime in the automation process. You can be working on optimizing lines or fulfilling research quests or just straight up building your rocket at all times. And anytime you would really need to wait for that little bit to meet a goal, instead of going into the town, you're just gonna go to bed and meet that requirement. I really only abused the heck out of this system near the end of the game, but even early on I was going to bed at 6 or 7 when I could have stayed up until midnight. On top of that, the relationships are probably the most obfuscated system in the game. It operates on the Stardew Valley system of gift giving. Every NPC likes a thing, give enough of that thing, and the relationship will go up. But I feel like the scaling is just not as straightforward, and the process of finding what they like isn't as rewarding as a result. It's the one system in the game that doesn't have a numerical value associated with it, and in turn, I just felt no incentive to actually figure out what would make people like me more. Which is a damning parallel of my real life as well. So straight up, the town and the relationship systems did absolutely nothing for me in the grand scheme of my playthrough. But they also didn't really detract from the parts of the games that I do like. Because while it uses all the aesthetics of a farming sim, this is an automation game through and through, and it does a very good job at that. The progression felt natural, the complexity of the lines you built was satisfying, and for all of my qualms about the infinite time scam that is the bed, the fact that you have to pretty closely manage the raw resources is something that I think is pretty valuable for an automation game. If you let the resource dry up, entire lines would be useless, so you either have to design them to be temporary, or design them to get alternate sources of materials eventually. That means it fixes one of the biggest problems with automation games, being that once you moved on to the more advanced parts of manufacturing, you aren't really engaging with the earlier aspects of it anymore unless you need to rebuild an entire line. This game has its early parts maintain relevancy through the entire playthrough. It was a really interesting aspect of automation that I haven't had to deal with much before. The game being so heavily grid-based also made this so very close to being comfortable to play on a controller. You could do it, but it's still not my coveted dream idea of a controller-based automation game. This also feels weird to bring up because basically every automation game has one, but the conveyor system in Little Rocket Lab feels like a minor miracle of programming. Just the raw system in place to get them set up is very intuitive and nice for making long lines really easily, but the fact that you can place them under things and they just start moving feels great. This game is a weird one. It's trying to tell a story using the automation genre and does have some successes in that department, but I feel like I didn't touch half of this game because it didn't relate to my factory. I still enjoyed my time, and it is a good automation game, but I don't know if I could say that it's a good game as a whole, considering so much of it doesn't fit properly. 7. Sword of the Sea. Sword of the Sea follows a lineage of games like Journey and 𝒔𝒐𝒎𝒕𝒉𝒊𝒏𝒈 to do something beautiful yet similar. But that's all you get from me here, because I spent the better part of last year streaming and editing all the games in that lineage into edited videos over on my highlight channel, youtube.com/@RyeRoyal. 5 games led to Sword of the Sea, and it was fascinating to play them all back to back before release. It would mean a lot to me if you went to check out my thoughts over on my other channel, or heck, even drop me a follow where I stream over at Twitch. Once I hit 50 followers, I will play my horrible Mario Maker 1 troll level for your viewing pleasure, so check them out. How does one get into... Oh, I accidentally my way into it. Story of my life, accidentally your way to success. Except that's not the story of my life, because I haven't successed myself yet, but I've accidentally. You better believe I've accidentally. 6. Consume Me. So, did literally anybody have a good time in college? Oh, Consume Me is a dieting strategy puzzle minigame collection. Sounds stressful and complicated? That's kind of the point. Because of all of those genres, it really is one thing above all, autobiographical. This game is about its lead developer and just how pressure and expectations can really wear on a person. There is so much about this game that just works for me, and it really is a wonderful piece of software when it comes to conveying a story through gameplay. Its style is goofy and cartoonish, but if I may risk an interpretation here, I'm going to say that's because half of this game is about a child. And also, despite being a very stressful and even slightly tragic story, it's all told with the perspective of hindsight. Jenny, the main character, is a real person. She's in the credits, right at the top. And there's no 20XX here. We know exactly when this story is being told, and it all happened a long enough time ago. I think the tone also really takes a bit of the edge off, because it would be a little weird following this girl through her life in what is seemingly a one-to-one retelling. It would feel like reading someone's diary, and especially as someone who's only going to relate to it on a very surface level, the gameplay and the messier style does help me to engage. I can kind of just take this story for what it is, a retelling, with the added emotional investment of actually having to accomplish a task at the same time. This game is no slouch when it comes to the actual game portion of it, and failure states are a real thing. I actually did reach a failure state in one of the 5 chapters, which basically means you have to restart an entire chapter, but honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. You could choose to give yourself a little bonus upon replaying a failed chapter, making it less likely to happen again, and the consequences being there is very necessary in the conveyance of the story. I think it's a wonderful compromise. There are so many little smart game design tricks to get you invested in the exact kind of way Jenny probably felt in the situation being retold. I really don't have a negative thing to say about it, and I don't want to do a deep dive into it either because I think the game is much smarter than anything anyone could really say about it. I'll say personally, it was never going to impact me on a core level. I didn't grow up as a girl, and the relationship dynamics that bring a lot of attention to the structure of the game are mostly foreign to me. That is, with the exception of the low esteem / overly critical self. I think everyone can more or less relate to that. By the time that arc reached its end, it was very resonant. I only mention how it impacts me personally because I want to emphasize how little that matters. I'm very glad this game exists, and I can so easily picture this game being someone's night in the woods, for lack of a better term. Look, I try to be fairly transparent and invite my audience to know me, but there's something about the right story or game hitting you at just the right time of your life. A game that not only resembles the feelings you're having, but wants to feel them with you. A game so resonant it basically changes the way you view everything. And there's just no way that this game doesn't do that for someone. And that's a really special thing to witness. I just hope that more people get a chance to connect with this game, because I do think that this is a story a lot of people have lived through, and would probably benefit from knowing other people have lived through too. I really enjoyed my peek at Jenny's life. I thought she and her friends told it well. And for those with which the story truly resonates, I'm very happy for you. 5. Donkey Kong Bananza. Yeah. It's Mario Odyssey 2. And I really wish people would just accept that fact. So many people are like, when are they gonna announce 3D Mario? It's been a long time. They should have launched Twitch 2 with 3D Mario. And I'm like, but my brother in Christ, this is from the Odyssey team. This is a Mario character. It's a 3D platformer. It's colorful as hell, and it's unique beyond what we could have imagined. This is a new Mario game. I don't know how to break it to you guys. Just because monkey doesn't mean not Mario. So yeah, this is Mario Odyssey 2, and it's fantastic. Nintendo did the hell out of the Rare treatment, and it's so heartwarming to see. I mean, like, I know it's their property and everything, but everyone knows that Rare did more for Donkey Kong, and the fact that Nintendo didn't just throw that all away is really cool. But it's also kind of funny, because in doing that, they kind of made the spiritual successor to Donkey Kong 64. A game that is beloved by many, but historically known to be so bloated and huge that very few people actually bothered finishing the thing. I don't know if I'm just at a different point in my life, but I really can't imagine 100%ing this game. For me, it was at its best when I was going through at breakneck pace, doing whatever caught my interest in a split second and ignoring everything else. Because just doing that was quite a lot. It also just has a different feel in general than a lot of 3D platformers. Say, in a 3D Mario, even in the more open ones, you still have obstacles to clear and pass to get through. Donkey Kong gives you so many options and abundance that it's almost a problem. If you abuse all of the powers given to you, this game is not hard in the slightest. And that's fine, because it's fun. It's fun to break sections like that. They do limit you occasionally for the tighter sections, but even that doesn't make breaking it in half out of the question. It's usually just more convenient to go the way they intended you to. It's just kind of sloppy in the most overindulgent way possible. Everything works exactly how they wanted it to. It's just hulking out, Kong Smash, monkey mode all the time, and that's, I think, what they were going for. So that's great. The platforming is really fun and expressive. I've said this before, especially open world platformers like this, if you just stuck to the basic platforming, you kinda need to escalate your difficulty quite a bit to make sure it's consistently entertaining. If you're just kind of a flat line, same moveset as the beginning, level design is pretty standard all the way through, you're gonna have a pretty boring experience. Unless you vary up what you're actually doing. Not just running and jumping, like the actual tasks you're doing. It is an expensive way to do game design, but this is Nintendo. If anyone could get away with that design philosophy, it's them. You're just constantly doing new shit. The moment you think you understand just how the terrain functions and all of the things you can do with terrain, there's like 7 more things in 8 more worlds. Minor tangent. A lot of people were clamoring for the Odyssey costumes to have more tangible uses or stats or something. I now think they were right to not do that, because in DKB, I just have costumes that look like absolute dog shit, and I don't like them. But because they have abilities now, I feel stuck with them. Why am I min-maxing my way through Donkey Kong? Only my therapist knows, and they won't tell me. So, you know what? Costumes, you're okay. You don't have to have stats attached. People were saying the story's good. I agree, because the story is reinforced in animation, and I really appreciated that. I like any time a game has to mechanically show that a story is progressing. Not just that text is happening, but like actually acknowledge that a story is happening and you're playing through it. Nintendo isn't great at making grand stories that you could write down and would still sound good, but they are really good at making stories that you're a part of. And the fact that they animated Pauline to be more confident the deeper you go, that's awesome. That's really cool storytelling. Like, just within the medium of video games, that is how you should tell stories, through animation and timing and triggers. It's kind of like a play that your audience has to be the star of. You can't control when they do something, but when they do hit those marks, that's when your story should happen. And the fact that they went along and put effort in to do that, that's the level of polish you're really only getting from Nintendo right now, especially in a 3D platformer. 4. Skate Story. Okay, let's start with what all of the trailers for this game can't do, which is explain what it is you're going to be doing in Skate Story. Yes, this is a skating game. You could break this game down into course clear style levels, time attack score based boss fights, and small Tony Hawk style hub worlds with mini missions and trials. You could turn this game into a high octane level based score chasing skate game and call it something like, I don't know, Skate, I don't know if that's been taken, and it would function. It would be one. It might even be one of the better ones just considering how clever it does get with some of its trick mechanics. The problem for the trailers is that that is not what this game is. This is Skate Story. Skate Story is about quite a lot of things, really. It's a story that takes place in hell, so it has contemplations on death and endings in general. It's about skating, which, despite being one of the most popular extreme sports, has always had an air of counterculture to it, so it has themes of anti-authoritarianism. It's also very much about the self-expression that comes with skating and art, and as a demon made of glass, how dangerous it can be, but how beautiful it is we do it anyway. All of that, on top of really wanting to be Neon Genesis Evangelion but with skateboards. It's got a lot going on, is what I'm trying to say, and what I'm also trying to say is that I probably didn't clock half of it. The unfortunate truth is that I played this game once, and I think you could go through this game with a fine-tooth comb through multiple playthroughs and pull out a much more solid theme or message, and I just don't have time to do that. It's also not why I enjoyed my time with it. The thing about this game is, I vibe with it on a very surface level. It's grungy and dirty and glitchy, but also so beautiful, and I think that is kind of emblematic of skating as a culture. And the music is so perfect. Like, I don't know if I would listen to it myself just in a playlist. It really needs to be attached to this game. I feel that way about a lot of music though, where I think I really only like the music because it reminds me of the thing that it came from. But yeah, this OST, I would listen to it because it would remind me of scenes from Skate Story. Beautiful, horrendous, nightmarish, hellish, glorious scenes. And the music was perfect for that. It's at some points beautiful and melodic, and other times it's glitchy and screaming and yelling at you and angry, and this game wants you to feel emotions. It wants you to feel things by playing this game. And along the way, if you begin thinking critically about why you are feeling those feelings, all the better. Not to say it's deeper than you think, but it's deeper than you think. It's a game I could enjoy on a shallow level, but I appreciate it so much that there is more to it if I really wanted to dive in. So mechanically, thematically, and emotionally, this game gets kind of dense. So much so that I did find it to be a little exhausting. I think that's why by the time I was getting to the end and things were getting very serious, I was like nostalgic for the times I could just wander around a hub and talk to weird characters, and I think that means a lot. These places especially, the hubs, are very dreamlike, but in a way that they're also serene, at least compared to all the other stuff going on. Between the hellish atmosphere, the constant failure, and the Evangelion inspirations littered all over this game, I think there's a possibility that it comes off as rather edgy, which is why I appreciate it so much when this game instead goes goofy. The various hubs still have all of the things I'm talking about. They're not atonal, but they're also where you get these goofy-ass Muppet characters, and I love them so much. Just like the actual joy of freestyle skating, this game very much feels like something that came out of an individual, a creator. There are moments in this game that I will remember forever, and others that caught me so off guard at the time, I actually had to pause so I didn't fail time attacks. I can't say it's going for any one thing in particular. I think going in trying to decipher it would cause a reading so deep as to lose something. But you can get lost in this game. You can surrender yourself to the vibe, and you can feel your feelings, and for that, it was awesome. Three, Mars First Logistics. I love the kind of game that this is, but even among the kind of game that this is, it's still one of the best ones. The kind of game that this is creative problem solving. It's creative because you need to build something, and because it's a game and not bound by the real world, you can be quite imaginative in the things you build, in this case, rovers. And it's problem solving because the game will give you scenarios in which you need to clear with your creations. And it's this latter half where the game really shines. I see so many of these creative building type games where you can build a structure or a system or a vehicle, and they have a lot of cool mechanics in place to let you do that, but they fall short when they actually have to be a game in addition to that. I wouldn't call the rover building aspect of Mars First Logistics basic, but it's the only one of these games where I would say that the building aspect of it is not nearly the entire experience. You could spend a lot of time building a really good vehicle, but you are going to spend more time actually playing the game, and I think that's a major accomplishment. So why does this game appeal to me so personally, aside from doing something well? If you know me at all, it's likely because of the one thing I've done, and that is the Super Mario Maker troll history video. I love trolling in video games. Subversion of ideas or mechanics is something that is so special to gaming by nature of it being an interactive medium. A lot of art forms can subvert your expectations, but only games can really pull one over on you and make you look the fool simply by partaking in the art. So it was with great pleasure when I discovered that Mars First Logistics is actually an amazing troll game. The premise is very simple, which is why I haven't felt the need to describe it yet. You are a rover and you deliver things from point A to point B. Your first little bot is tiny and can barely manipulate a box, and it could so easily have escalated by just making the objects bigger or your destinations farther. But as soon as the second mission, the game demonstrates how clever it actually is. From a simple box, you could basically just push to your goal, to a box full of oranges that you can spill all over the place. The game constantly finds ways to trip you up. I mean, where to even begin? When I finally had a manipulator I felt wouldn't drop anything I tried to throw at it, the game gave me an umbrella that I not only needed to pick up, but articulate the right way to get it out of the building I was in. Or when I decided to take a shorter delivery to make some quick cash, only to realize there was an entire mountain in between A and B, making a direct path nearly impossible. And when I finally had a general understanding of how to move across most types of environments and pick up just about any kind of object, the game makes me deliver a butterfly. Have you ever seen a forklift attempt to catch a butterfly? Because I'll spoil it and say, it doesn't go well for the butterfly. The game is just so endlessly clever in the ways that it will make you rethink your build. All of that on top of having a very satisfying loop. Is the delivery too hard? Well, you can try and take on some side missions and get new parts or unlocks, or you can just chart out the world a little more to try and find new points of interest in general. Or screw delivery, why not build a monorail system through the whole game you can actually ride? It was just so hard to put down, and every time I found myself thinking I had overcome the challenges the game could present me, only to be put flat on my ass by something I had overlooked, was a true joy. Just get it out of here. There we go. Alright, that wasn't so bad. Now pick it up proper. There, just a lovely parasol robot. I am protected from the harsh rays of the sun. This is perfect. How the hell do I get back there? Alright, it might be time to start doing bullshit like this. Oh, there's a ramp. Never mind, I would have been fine. Yeah! Who's good at video games now? Oh, I'm so tense. Jeez. Oh, it just changed color. That was awesome. But that was really cool. I got a delivery trophy. Oh no, deliver trophy. I'm like, oh, finally, some recognition. No, just do that other thing. 2. Promise Mascot Agency. Promise Mascot Agency is the latest game from Kaizen Gameworks, makers of Paradise Killer. And when you compare the two, that makes all the sense in the world. A lot of the DNA is shared, which is fantastic, because I absolutely loved Paradise Killer. However, for the context of this video, you'll know that the hardest part of these games is describing the premise to another person. So, in Promise Mascot Agency, you are a high-ranking member of a small yakuza. A deal you were in charge of goes south, and in order to make up for it, your death is faked and you are sent to a remote island town to work at the last remaining property controlled by your clan. This Love Hotel. Your job is to repay your debt and turn this business around, so to do that you start the titular Mascot Agency. That's just the premise of the story. The actual game is even more convoluted and sounds just as crazy when you try to describe it. This is an open-world collectathon visual novel business sim. Genres are stupid and words have no meaning. Needless to say, this is a very bizarre game. But I don't want it to come off as being quirky for the sake of it, because all of these elements still work really well together, and I just love it so much. There are just so many different aspects to this game, and I have trouble describing any of them because they all play into each other so well. To get an idea of what I mean, let's look at Pinky, our companion throughout this entire thing and the focal point for a lot of the game. Pinky is a mascot. That's not their job or hobby, it's their species. Mascots are living creatures in this world and can embody any number of things just like an actual mascot can. Pinky is also a member of your yakuza, and yes, she is a giant severed pinky with an uwu face. She is just as endearing as she is vulgar and violent. She cares about the mascots and citizens of this small town as deeply as she does loathe the ones who made it this way. The town is obviously in decline, many structures are completely abandoned, and the population is noticeably tired, but there are still thriving businesses, and those businesses will ask for your help in promotion. Promotion that can be done by the mascots. These mascots may be mystical in nature, but they need a paycheck just like any other employee, and you need to recruit them by actually finding where they live in the world. Not only does the island have jobs to find and mascots to recruit, but it also has several side stories and quests that can upgrade your business and vehicle. And if you thought the traversal and exploration of the world would be where things mellow out or at least plateau tonally, your truck has a jump button, built-in nitrous, can float on water, and rail grind, so it's also a platformer. But it is this expressive and engaging movement that I think ties the whole thing together, because the world is the point at which all of these odd little paths meet up. And there are an awful lot of odd little paths. This game just has a very strange energy to it. You're doing so many things that seem to be in conflict, but it all really does mesh for the most part. I won't say that I enjoyed literally every aspect of this game. The merchandising claw machine mechanic was a specific low point. I've talked about a lot of games that I felt had a strong enough core but played it too safe. This is the exact opposite. There are a lot of interesting little things that they tried to get weird with, and if any of them were alone, I don't think the experience would be as strong, but together, the fact that they tried so much makes it all work. I honestly feel like the sheer amount of mechanics kind of fits with the tone the story is setting. This town is not the most polished, but it's perfectly suitable for the inhabitants of it, and those inhabitants are nothing less than giant misfits and weirdos. And I'm not just talking about the mascots. This story is supposed to be pulpy and exaggerated, but for as goofy as it can get, I feel like I was able to take it seriously more often than not. It knew exactly what it wanted to be, and the story of people who don't fit in coming together to make a place where they do is just a winning formula for me. My biggest concern for the game is I simply don't know who it's for other than me. It's goofy and off-putting and silly, but it's also extremely vulgar, occasionally violent, and sometimes mundane. It's a money management visual novel that you progress through by exploring a small open world. I simply don't know who that appeals to other than people just like me, so if that sounds like your kind of jam, I guess you have great taste. I hope I've made it evident why I think that disappointment is the through line of the games I've played in 2025. I know there has been some great stuff, but even of the games that I enjoyed, I still found things that brought down the experience for me. I know it may be rich to say, considering I just spent however long complaining, but I don't think of myself as someone with great expectations. I don't really buy into hype anymore. There are just so many different experiences out there in gaming that I find holding on to hope for that one perfect title just rarely pays off. Some of the things that you dream for the most will never come, and even of the ones that do, they will rarely rise to the lofty goals you set for them. Which is why it warms my heart to say that Hollow Knight Silksong was easily my game of the year. Silksong is one of those games that gives me a break from all of the summarizing and selling, because I don't have to tell you what this game is. You know what this game is. Everyone knew what this game was. The launch of this game nearly crashed the Steam, PlayStation, and Nintendo storefronts. It is quite possibly one of the most anticipated games of all time. The only thing I would have to say in this review is that it met expectations. That's it. That's all it would really need. I can't express just how much people wanted from this game. It took so long that people were genuinely concerned it would never come out. So many other titles that had come out since Hollow Knight that took inspiration from it, that we were worried that it had been eclipsed and Silksong just couldn't offer what Hollow Knight originally did. No amount of words or explanation could really say something more profound than it did. It's the kind of game that makes criticism hard, because it did all of the things that I hate suggesting of sequels. All of the things that are annoying or unreasonable to ask for. It is bigger, it is prettier, it's mechanically deeper, and it has a theme so strong that I think it's actually one of my favorite stories told in a game. So, let's talk about that. Hollow Knight Silksong is a girl game. Of all the things that the first Hollow Knight game did, this game does improve on many of them, so I don't really need to go into all of it, but the thing that is wholly new is Hornet, which I know sounds crazy because she's also the only thing that's carried over from the first game, at least in terms of the world. Hornet is one of the very few named characters in Hollow Knight, and one of even fewer that survives the events of the game. She has now been upgraded to protagonist in Silksong, and she is what makes this game so special for me. Hollow Knight had a very unique method of storytelling that not a lot of games can pull off. It's mostly done with the world, but it's based in interconnected lore. And when I say lore, I really just mean facts that you can find and observe that are sustained and recognized elsewhere in the game. It sounds so simple, but that's because it's how we think, existing in a real world. Everything has to feel tangible to us. But in fiction, it's a lot harder to pull off. For all of that storytelling that is so unique, it lacked something that is actually far more common, which is a real character. The knight was merely a vessel to view that world. Hornet is fully part of it. Hornet has her own voice and speaks often. You cannot change her, you can merely fail to play as her. It's this simple change in point of view that I think adds the most in Silksong, and is perhaps the smartest change they could have included in a sequel. Hornet was brought to a new world for Silksong, and as anyone who's played the game will tell you, it does not treat you kindly. This game is harder than most, and I had several points at which I nearly gave up. However, I was just endlessly fascinated by how Hornet interacted with this world. Hollownest, the world of Hollow Knight, was grand and sprawling, but it was still a world of decay and was full of tragedy. That is the world that Hornet comes from, the one that she watched over and sentryed. Farloom, the world of Silksong, is approaching that very same fate. It makes all the sense that she would desire to help it. Farloom may be vast, brutal, and left to rot by the orchestrators of its design, but it is far from dead. Nearly every corner of this game has characters to talk to, some with full-on quests and arcs to complete. I'm going to give you a small yet sarcastic spoiler and say there's more than one ending to this game. But of course there is. Hollow Knight had nearly 6. I don't have to divulge the details or implications of every ending, or even the true ending, my favorite one, but I will tell you how it's achieved. Vaguely. Like I said, Hornet was brought to this land, and it punished her around every corner. But she, too, is formidable, and she can conquer it right back. I won't say it's easy to speed through this game with reckless abandon, but it's more than possible. With singular intent on your mind, getting an ending in this game is not very complicated, and such a ferocity would match Hornet's tone on occasion. But that is not how you get the true ending. To get the true ending in this brutal, gut-punchingly difficult time of a game, you need to care. Hornet needs radical empathy to guide her to the deepest crevices of Farloom. Only by caring about the smallest of bugs and the most lost of causes does she really have a chance at preventing this world from the collapse shared by her homeland. It's a heck of a thing to watch, because these aren't simply dialogue choices or some extra collectibles. It's a lot of actual effort and challenge. And I think it's this empathy in the face of hardship that makes this so resonant in 2025. The world will always challenge us, but how we meet that challenge is how things change. It'll be good. Yeah, are you happy? Oi, did you see it, Red Maiden? The Great Gate heard my song, and in its infinite and ancient kindness has opened the way forward to us. You're welcome. Gate, nicest gate I've met. Gate, greatest miracle yet. Yep. Hornet's not the type to take credit. She's too humble for that. I was disappointed by some games in 2025, but I played so many good things, and I had such a good time otherwise. Whether it was with my friends, on stream, or just the quiet conversation between me and a new game. If you stuck around for any of that, I truly appreciate it. 2026 seems to be an interesting year for the world yet again, but I am still glad I have games to look forward to. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.